SX workers at Reddit. Have any of you ever have a close friend or anyone you normally interact with daily be a surprise customer? What was the experience like, and how did it affect your interactions with them? Other way around. When I turned 22 or 23 for my birthday, we went out drinking and ended up at a strip club. Stripper was making her rounds on stage to everyone sitting at the pit. She jumped on me and says my name excitedly. Only then I realized it was an employee of mine. Made sense why she couldn't work nights. I was a manager at a restaurant and had like 15 employees at the time. I had a brief stint as a bachelorette party stripper a couple of years back. On another state. I worked through an agent who does my client filtering. I was hired by a lady named Tori. Whoa. What a coincidence. I said. My childhood friend. With the same name was also getting married. I parked my car. Boarded the venue and wore my costume, which involves a full face mask. Long story short. Same person. And the room was full of familiar faces. I managed to finish my routine with my mask on. Got out of the venue as soon as I can. Thinking I dodged a bullet. Then I remembered my back tattoo. Woke up with 50+ messages the next morning. Attending a bachelor party a long time ago. The stripper came in. Said hello. And went to the bathroom to fix herself up. She peeked out the door and called one of them over. Turns out. She went to high school with us. A couple of years younger. She called a friend to replace her and she left. My mom was a stripper when I was in elementary school. At 22 yo guy came in and paid for a lap dance and my mom recognized his last name and asked if he knew Ruth. I have no earthly idea why she would ask him given what she suspected. He got weirded out and said that Ruth was his mom and my mom said that his mom was her daughter's 3rd grade teacher. He then begged her not to tell his mom where he was. Apparently my mom just laughed and said she didn't want her daughter's teacher knowing that she was there either. I hated that teacher. She was such a jerk to me because we were poor and my mom always dressed SLTTY. I'm glad her kids weren't as uptight as she was. My much younger brother was getting married. Had a bachelor party at a strip club with a dozen or so high school friends. After about an hour there, a rather ordinary looking stripper comes on stage. Takes off her top and our tables of guys goes wild. Standing and applauding and hollering. I have no idea what is going on. The stripper looks through the stage lights. Her eyes get really big. She grabs her top and runs off stage to the back. Bouncers come running over to our table. Thinking we're starting trouble. Nope. It turns out all of the guys in his high school class had a history class with her a few years back. She later came out and talked with us. Said she never thought she'd see someone, let alone 12, she knew. It was in the next town over. I was a stripper back in the day. Halfway through a stage show realized that my flatmate's brother and his friends were there. That's how I was outed. Lol. Nothing much changed. I was not a SX worker at all but I was a fine art model for a college for a while. There were so many people that I went to high school with that entered those classes over the 2 years I worked there. Usually they wouldn't say anything and I wouldn't say anything and I would just get naked and pose for 3 hours lol. Sometimes we would chat after. Somewhat related. Me and buddy, Tom, go to this sleazy strip club in different part of town. As soon as we walk in he sees bartender he went to high school with who say Tom you perv. What are you doing here? I'm a stripper. My friend's dad came in. I hadn't seen him or my friend since high school. I accidentally asked him for a lap dance before I could tell who it was. He said no and I realized who it was as I walked away. He came in a few more times and avoided eye contact with me. When I was on stage he would look away. Another story. My first day as a stripper I saw 2 guys from my high school. We chatted. Then they both paid for lap dances. Not a SX worker but know a couple current former who have worked in brothels. And they could see clients when they entered and choose not to come meet them if they recognized them, or if they just didn't feel like working at that moment. So it didn't usually happen. But on the other hand, a friend of mine slept with another friend of mine in exactly this way. She didn't mind him knowing and he didn't mind paying. When I was a cam girl, I would have many guys message me saying they were my cousin or something. They were not. Just trying to play out a fetish and I wasn't into it. So then one day a guy in the main chat said that he knew me and his name was AJ. Fake name. I was like, yeah right. I've only ever known one AJ. If it's true, what's my name? And sure enough, he put my real first name right there in the chat. We were in a youth group in church together almost a decade before that. He became a regular. Not a sex worker. But found out a girl from high school that I had a crush on was a stripper. It was my buddy's bachelor party. We load up in a van and head about an hour away to a better strip club. We get in and settle at a table. About 30 minutes in, I get a tap on the shoulder and this SIS chick hops in my lap. She calls me by the nickname I had in high school and hugs me. She was always tomboyish in high school. Never wore makeup. Always competed well in gym. Kinda nerdy. Quiet. And reserved. But always very pretty if you thought about it. I didn't recognize her for a full minute. It was a fun reunion. It was a full nude spot and she gave no FCKS during her stage performance. Really seeing everything. I really should have tried to pursue it in HS. But I was a dumbass back then. TL. There was a girl I went to high school with who was basically a walking stereotype. She fit so well into the archetypal ditzy blonde mold that you might swear it was an act if you didn't know better. She was also f-king mean. This girl was a power bitch and wasn't really nice to anybody as far as I'm able to remember. People orbited her because she was hot and had everything. She never really bothered me because I did my best to be invisible. But the handful of interactions I ever had with her left me feeling unpleasant. Turns out she wound up being a pretty lucrative stripper later in life. I bought a lap dance from her and while being nice is part of the job, it really did feel like in those brief few minutes that she did have a genuine personality shift. She was way more laid back. You could even hear it in her voice. She even commented about how she wasn't a bitch like I used to be. And I have nicer tits. It was a genuinely fun interaction. She seemed happier in comparison to the person I remembered. I had a classmate who was a stripper and she was very open about loving it when people she knew came to see her at work and let her dance for them. She thought it was intimate in a fun, friendly way. I don't really qualify as a sex worker. I'm a guy who FCKS women on camera for PR and producers, so I'm not paid and I don't have customers. But one time I showed up to a shoot for a blow bang and ran into the guy who owned and operated the CrossFit place I went to. We acknowledged the connection on the set and performed our roles but basically never spoke of it again and resumed our normal trainer-customer dynamic after that. He was married at the time but I think they were open, not that it was any business of mine. Not exactly someone I knew well, but I went on a Tinder date with a guy. Went to see a movie, nothing exciting. Nice enough guy but no chemistry at all, so didn't stay in contact. Opened my hotel door to my client one night to see him standing there. Didn't react to the fact that I knew him because there's not a single person who knows what I do. Spent the entire booking telling me how sad he was we never caught up again and how he knew it was me when he saw my photos. Photos were blurred and face cropped out but I've got distinguishing hair, and how it must be fate. Played dumb the whole time because this guy knew my actual identity and eventually asked him to leave because of how uncomfortable his behavior was making me. A guy that works with my mom found out I sold nudes and not only did he buy some, he also sent me $50 every month to treat myself. My bizzle friend was getting married to his wife a few years ago. For his bachelor party we hired a male stripper for him. You know, as his farewell package. We thought the wordplay was just excellent. All of us friends are straight guys. So instead of picking out a stripper for him we just called up an agency. Told them the situation. And they sent someone. That someone was his stepbrother that he doesn't really get along with. It was pretty awkward. He was more professional than I think any of us expected him to be. He called the agency and they sent someone else over within an hour. A woman this time who was not in any way related to anyone there. They apparently have a bit of a better relationship now. The awkwardness and embarrassment of the situation gave them something to bond over a little. Not a worker though, funny story. One night my best mate was in town, lived in another state. Used to live here. We went out clubbing and eventually decided to go to the strippers. Pay our money, and as we enter my friend notices a stripper laying on her back spread eagle for a guy. Highly drunk he yells out, "Hell yeah, how good is this?" The stripper hears and notices my friend. Sits up and yells, "What are you doing in here?" My friend instantly went and sat in the corner proper embarrassed. Turns out it was his cousin. How does one even find sex workers? This is a mystery to me because this was like when I was kid and didn't know where to find weed. When I was kid and didn't know where to find weed. Not a sex worker, but delivered a pizza to a known sex worker, and at the same moment I was about to knock on the door. A relative opens the door and watches me holding the pizza up to him. I couldn't do anything but laugh. He laughed too, maybe out of embarrassment, and as soon as the sex worker understood what was going on, she also started laughing. Never mentioned this moment to anyone who knows my relative. And he is grateful for that to this day. We surprised a friend from university that was working at a strip club to pay for her studies. She just noticed us, winked at us and did her show as usual. Zero FCKS of any kind were given by anyone. We got a call to a club for head injury. We get there, there was some yelling going on in the private booths. The bouncer comes over telling us the guy is in said booth. Turns out he has a broken nose and a couple teeth missing. Blood everywhere. He didn't know that his sister was a dancer, so he went to the club to IDK. Must have wanted to talk to her or something, or to take her back home. Anyway, he gets there and asks for her and they tell him she's busy, but he hears her voice talking to the guy she's with. The guy turned out to be one of his friends, and the brother got so mad that his friend was seeing his sister like this that the brother punched the guy in the face. The girl must have ended her shift then, because as we were getting ready to leave she had changed back into her clothes and was leaving with her brother. My good friend used to work in a local brothel. There's a TV in their staff lounge area playing the live security footage of clients entering. So if they see a friend or relative come in, they don't have to file out with the other girls for the selection lineup. I used to be a stripper, and one night at work I turned around and locked eyes with my very Mormon and surprisingly very wasted aunt and uncle. Used to be a sex worker. Ended up in an appointment with my best friend's dad. Didn't figure it out until I was telling my friend about the very awkward guy and her face went pale. I put 2 and 2 together pretty quickly and changed the subject. I was a stripper and a bunch of rich banker guys come in. They want me to be their dancer. And I was thrilled. I spent my shift being as lewd as the rules allowed for them and got a great tip for my trouble. Fast forward to the next day. We go to my boyfriend's dad's, bank president, house, and there's a pile of people I recognized. Presumably they saw pictures of me and recognized me at the club. Thankfully, they said nothing to BF's dad, but they'd have me be their private stripper for the night once or twice a week. I think they were trying to spite BF's dad. At a club for my friend's 21st and we got a girl to give him a lap dance. It's 5 of us just having a good time while my buddy is getting his crotch booty slammed by this girl. Only she kept looking at me constantly. Eventually she leans forward, asks what school I went to. Turns out she was the girl I knew who sat behind me in 6th and 7th grade. We both had a chuckle. My wife was a stripper back in the 80s and 90s. One day her gin came in, he tipped her $100 and they had a good laugh. About 10 years after I graduated college, my fraternity had a reunion during homecoming. One of my fraternity brothers was walking around with a very pretty woman in tow, introducing her to everyone as his fiancée. This guy was not a ladies' man in any way. In fact, he was the kind of guy who had no luck at all with women despite his family's wealth. So I thought, good for him. The kid couldn't get a date. And now look at him. But then I started looking closer at the woman. She kind of bore a resemblance to this stripper I remembered from a few years ago. The druggy one who used to give hand jobs in the champagne room. But I dismissed it. Couldn't be her. Later at the party, she pulled me into an empty room, looked at me pleadingly and said, "Please don't tell him." I was a dancer for about a month when I got out of high school. I don't know about now, but back then women were allowed to be a lot more handsy. I was already a nervous wreck every time I worked cause I was still sort of a virgin at the time, but what caused me to quit was this old woman and her family came in that knew me from church, and when she recognized me asked for a private dance. She was worse than most. And I ended up crying and quitting that night because it disgusted me that this woman that watched me grow up since I was 4 could act like that with me. Throw away. This happens a lot. My ex would hire girls for threesomes, for birthdays etc. And there were a few girls we got to know pretty well. And yes, it happens both by accident and on purpose when people find out the sort of work they do. From what I gather it's awkward, but a job's a job. Okay. So the beats are actually on sale this week for 69 cents a pound. Oh. 69. You know. Like last weekend we. Goddamn it, Carl. This is Wegmans and I'm on the clock. This isn't 100% in line with the question, but I thought my contribution might be appreciated. I'm a bisexual male. When I was in my early 20s I broke up with my long-term girlfriend because she cheated on me. I started lurking around on Grindr looking for some light relief. In comes my ex's uncle, in his 40s, who I had met on multiple occasions. Sends me some shirtless photos and an offer of money for sex. I decide to take the high road. I don't reply. I don't screenshot and message her with it, despite being really tempted. A couple of days later the shameless almost nephew-in-law FK messages me going, "Oh sorry Jeffy, I didn't recognize you with your new haircut." I still giggle about it to this day. I went through this from the other angle. Back in college my fiance was out of town with her mother. I was gifted a ticket to the gentleman's club across the highway from the college in town and figured this to be the best weekend to give it a shot. Long story short, about the third girl to come out dancing was doing the whole head swirly thing and looked down and then whipped her head up hair back and we locked eye contact. At the same time we both said, "Don't tell, fiance." Yeah. My fiance's best friend was a stripper and nobody knew. When I was young and dealing with a drug addiction, I sold myself to get money to sustain this. One day I had 3 costumers. They messaged me and we met up where they planned. One picked me up with his car, one at his apartment, and the last one also picked me up by car. I take a look at him, and it was my friend's father. He was single and didn't know I was the hostess. It was a bizarre night. I haven't told my friend and things are just as normal. For about a year before I became a mother I made and sold content. I wasn't really a cam general because all of my business was done privately. But my best customer was one of my best friends from high school. He was a sweet kid. Just a little socially awkward. It was a great experience honestly. At first I felt a bit bad about having him pay me. But he was more than happy to do so. He's also the only person I sold to while being pregnant because I did not love my pregnant body. But he made me feel a bit better about myself. We still talk. It's been little over a year since his last purchase. He is still one of my best friends. And if he asked I would more than likely still sell him content because he was always so appreciative and wouldn't accept free content. I'm very grateful I have a friend like him.